Hello, 8th graders. I hope you're having a nice week. Hopefully, the first part of your week went well and you got through your review and your quiz okay. The first half of chapter 8 shouldn't be a big deal, and remember, we're not going to be able to see the other half until after MCAs. So, we've got a while in between the first half and the second half. Today, you're going to get a worksheet on midpoint formula and distance formula, which are the last two things that we need to talk about before we get to MCAs next week. And then remember, when Mr. P gets back, we're going to do some, when you guys get back, we're going to do some MCA planning. So when I get back, most of you are going to be gone. Some of you will be around, but when you get back, we're going to go through everything that we talked about all year and make sure that we're squared away and good to go. So today's worksheet is on the midpoint formula and the distance formula. The midpoint formula shows us how to find the middle between any 2 points on our coordinate plane. And the formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Your answer will be in the form of a point. So it'll be an x, comma, y. Now remember, in your original points, you need to label all point 1 and point 2, and then you'll break them down into their parts. So I'm going to label these out. 2 is the x value of point 1, and that makes 2x1. 4 is the y value of point 1, so that makes it y1. 6 is the x value of point 2, so that makes it x2, and 8 is the y value of point 2, which makes it y2. Now we can go ahead and put them in our formula. So our midpoint is equal to x1, 2, plus x2, 6, over y1, or over 2, comma, y1, 4, plus y2, 8, over 2. 2 plus 6 is 8, so I have 8 over 2, comma, 4 plus 8 is 12, so I have 12 over 2, which gives me 4 comma 6. We want to come down and do the same thing with problem number 2. These are problem 1 and 2 from your worksheet, by the way. So problem number 2, this is point 1. So that makes 6 the x1 and 4 the y1. Because 6 is the x value and 4 is the y value. Over here we have point 2, which makes 2 x2 and 10 y2. Now we'll go ahead and put that in our formula. Our midpoint is equal to x1, 6, plus x2, 2, over 2, comma, y1, 4, and y2, 10. so we can work through that. 6 plus 2 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. 4 plus 10 is 14, divided by 2 is 7. So 4, 6, and 4, 7 were the answers to problems 1 and 2 on the midpoint side of your worksheet. So hopefully you're on the right side of your worksheet. Now we're going to flip our worksheet over to the distance formula side of the worksheet. So our distance formula is x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. All the components are the same because I'm still working with 2 points. But this time my goal is to find the distance between those points. So over here, my answer is a point. Over here, my answer is a distance. So it'll just be a value. And our distances are all just in units. We don't have an actual unit measure. So it won't be like feet or meters or miles. It'll just be 16 units. Also, you'll notice with the square root in the distance formula, very often answers will come out and not be perfect. They won't be perfect answers. They're not going to give you square root of 16 every time, or the square root of 100, or the square root of 144, which you all know. They're going to give you things like the square root of 32, or the square root of 86. I want you to leave the roots as roots. So if you get an answer of the square root of 86, that's your answer. Write the square root of 86. Don't put that in your calculator and find that it's 9.2168 and write 9.2168. Write the square root of 86. We need to go through our problem and label our points again. I always label my points, even after all of my experience. This is point 1, which makes this x1 and y1. This is point 2, which makes this x2 and y2. Now I can put them in my distance formula. Distance equals square root. Now notice that x2 comes first. So we're going to put our x2 up front, 1 minus y1, 9. And then we do our y2, 1 minus our y1, 7. So that gives me the square root of 1 minus 9, which is negative 8 squared, plus 1 minus 7, which is negative 6 squared. Now be really careful on this because your calculator sometimes lies to you. You need to use these parentheses to make sure that it squares the negative. If you write negative 8 squared in your calculator, it will tell you that's negative 64. But that is not the case. Negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. So we need to be careful when we type these in. If you're putting it in your calculator, you want to write it as parenthesis negative 8 parenthesis squared. That will give you 64, which is what you're looking for. So negative 8 squared is 64. Negative 6 squared, 6 times 6 is 36. 64 plus 36 is 100. So I have the square root of 100 as my answer, which does square root. Hopefully you figured out that that's 10. That's question 1 from the distance formula side of your worksheet. Now I'm going to jump down to question number 6. Over on the midpoint side of the worksheet, everything flows pretty smoothly until you get into the bottom chunk. The last 6 can be a little tricky, and if you have trouble with them, try to struggle through with your friends, and if you can't get there, that's fine. Mr. P will help you when you get back. Just turn the worksheet in at the end of the hour, okay? But on the back side of the worksheet, some of them in the middle, up in that top group, get tricky because of negatives. A lot of chops and things like that, so we have to be careful. Point 1. X1, Y1. Point 2. X2, Y2. Distance. Alright, Y2, or X2 I mean, -6 minus X1, -1, plus Y2, 0, minus Y1, -4. Alright, this front one, chops. So I have -6 plus 1, which is -5 squared. The back one, chops to 0 plus 4, which is 4 squared. Again, make sure you type these in correctly using your parentheses. -5 squared is 25. 4 squared is 16. 25 plus 16 is 41. Does 41 square root? No, it does not. So this is my answer. It is not 6.5 something. It's this. The square root of 41 is my solution. Now I'm going to come over to problem 9, and I'm going to show you a different method of doing this, which is also acceptable. You can use a coordinate plane to find the distance between 2 points. Let's take a look at this particular one. 0, -4. That's 0 left and right and 4 down. Now this will only work if our graphing skills are up to snuff. 0, -4. Our next point is 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Once I have my points on the board, I want to make a triangle between them. And the triangle is the slope that they would move. Rise, run, hypotenuse. So just like the triangles we made when we did our graphing, we're making a triangle here. Now we need to count out our rise and our run. So our rise here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, sorry, I counted my start point. Don't count your start point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I thought I'd overcounted. My run across is 1, 2, 3. Now, it doesn't matter if your rise and runs are positive or negative because you're going to square them just like you did over here. So don't worry about that. Now the next move here is to use our Pythagorean theorem, which hopefully you guys remember because we were just doing it. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. The hippopotamus is our distance. So my rise and my run go in for A and B. 6 squared is 36. 3 squared is 9. When I put them together, I'm going to get my hypotenuse. 36 plus 9 is 45. 45 is c squared. So remember, we have to square root to get c. So c is the square root of 45, which is also the distance between the 2 points. Now you'll notice that the process is very similar. We're squaring, adding, and then square rooting. That's because the distance formula is written from the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem is actually how we get our distance formula. We find the difference in our x values and the difference in our y values, we square them, add them together, and then square root the answer. So if you prefer to use the Pythagorean theorem in a more visual sense on a piece of graph paper, that is one method of doing this. If you prefer to use the distance formula, that's a second method of doing the same thing. They both get you to the same general answer in the end. Hopefully this will go okay. Make sure that you get the top chunk done on both sides. So 1 through 12 on the midpoint side and 1 through 14 on the distance formula side. Work on the chunks on the bottom of the worksheet only if you have extra time. So I only want you working on those chunks at the bottom if you have extra time. You may work on this tomorrow during class. If you need extra time to work on it, I'll put that in the notes for Mr. Schaffler. And when you're done with it, then tomorrow you'll work on the MCA packet that I set aside for you. If you're done with this today though, you can just turn it in and work on the MCA packet tomorrow. There'll be plenty of it to do. On the MCA packet tomorrow, you do not have to get everything all done. On this one, you have to get the top parts done completely. I'm gonna grade it that way. On the MCA packet tomorrow, you need to get as much done as you can. So panic less about that and more about this. This is more important than that is for now. Now both are important. It's important that you work hard and do what you're supposed to do. All right, I'm gonna move out of the way and give just a few seconds with all this stuff up there so that everyone can copy down these formulas. Make sure the formulas are on the top of your worksheet on each side, and I would put them in my notes somewhere. Put the formulas in your notes somewhere so you're prepared to do these on tests or things in the future.